don't have a quorum right now, but we're going to go ahead and start our business. We won't be taking any votes or anything, but we'll go ahead and proceed with the reports or anything that anybody has to have any input from the crowd. So at this time, I'd like to ask Councilman Curtis Snell to lead his invocation.
Rise, please. Lord, I want to thank you, Lord, for this day. Thank you for the abundance of rain you've supplied for us. It's good for the crop, but bad for the construction, so Lord, we thank you for it. And Lord, be with us as we go through these procedures today. Help us to make good decisions for our people. And just help us to be brothers and sisters as we go through these procedures, Lord. Thank you, Lord, for everything. Amen.
Thank you, Mr. Snell. Can I ask Shelley to call roll?
Meredith Fraley. Bill England.
Here.
Bill John Baker.
Here.
Jack Baker. Harley Buzzard.
Here.
Julia Coates. Bradley Cobb. Joe Crittenden. Jody Fishinghawk. Janelle Fulbright. Here. Don Garvin. Chuck Hoskin Jr.
Here.
China Gloria Jordan. Present. Curtis Snell.
Here.
Chris Soap. David Thornton. Kara Cowan Watts. We do not have a quorum.
Thanks, y'all. Okay, what we'll do, we'll go ahead and proceed with the Cheryl. There's been a latest handout. Does everybody have that in front of you? One of the changes that's in there is in section 2, the last sentence. This act repeals and supersedes legislative act 38-05. I want to make that very clear that that's in here. And at the top of the heading also it's an act repealing and superseding. So that's really the only change that's in this handout that we have in front of us, so we can proceed with. Todd, you want to?
I'll make sure we got I'll make copies for everybody.
You ready, Counselor?
I was born ready.
All right. What is the pleasure of the committee? We are on the agenda is the Taro Act. In front of you is 4 proposals for amendments submitted by Councilperson Jody Fishinghawk. That shows exactly what section and what title where you put in these where you would insert these amendments. We can discuss these amendments. We have obviously several members from CNE, and I know that one of the emphasis for this meeting was to have CNE come up and kind of give you a snapshot of where they're at in Taro's implementation in their policies and procedures. So, Mr. Chairman, with that, I would probably recommend, since we have individuals from CNE, that we would hear from them first and then consider their comments.
Okay, thank you. Secretary of State, Melanie, you have anything?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just as Mr. Hembry noted, we have David Stewart here today to give an update as to the Chief's commitments on subcontracting processes. So he's here to give a report as to what progress we've made, what proposals we are making to make consistent across the Cherokee Nation and the business entities to make those changes. So if you would, we could allow him to do that for you.
Sure, thank you. Mr. Stewart.
All right, good afternoon. We have a lot of issues that I think have arisen as a result of, of course, our increase in business and size and all the money that we have, and has brought kind of to the forefront many of the practices that we've tried to put these in contract over time and probably haven't done a very good job of that quick enough to address it. So what I'd like to do is talk fundamentally about some high-level issues that I think you need to consider as we go through this, because the provisions in law that would change our ability to get number one low bid, I think that's important for the tribe. Anytime we violate that principle, we just get into the free enterprise system, and it doesn't allow business to work for the tribe or for our business as it should. And that system is very well founded. It's worked for years. And I think what I would like to propose is that we maintain a low bid kind of concept throughout all this, and not, I don't know what the end result will be, but low bid, we retain the integrity of the bid process, and at the same time try to be fair to our Cherokee vendors. Anytime we try to legislate a change in that free enterprise system and give preference to a particular business, we do a couple things. We limit competition. So if I have a group of businesses that feel like they have preference, and that preference is substantial, then I remove from that system competition. So if you know, Tina, that you come to me and you have a 15% preference, and I'm taking bids, and these people know that, and they don't feel like they have a chance of winning, then they're probably not going to bid. We can't win, because business is so competitive that the prices usually, are within 5-10 points of each other. Maybe, you get one that's skewed off of that. And so the concept itself is not bad to help Cherokees, but the concept where it limits the number of people that even would entertain to bid further reduces the competitiveness and over time increases price. I mean, that's just the way the free enterprise system, without competition, it's been proved year after year, and over the ages, that is not a good way to limit price. And so what we're all about is to try to limit that price and give the tribe, over time, competitive price and value for what they do. Now, the challenge with that is we have Cherokees that want to be in business. And I don't think that we can be in the business of providing an imbalance or kind of an unfair competitive advantage to them, because then you reduce competition and it drives prices up for the tribe. And so the tribe then, let's say if we had a 5 to 10% competitive imbalance as a result of legislation, then every year that would result in potentially $20 to $30 million of cost to the tribe, which then decreases at the end of the day, the funds that it has to present to for eyeglasses and dividends and so on. So I think we need to be very careful about how we do this and try to be fair to our Cherokee vendors. We definitely want to do that, and we've attempted to do that a number of ways, and I think we have ways to do that that would keep competition and be fair, require them to follow laws, monitor. I think this is all really about having some personal touch to the system, where if it gets out of balance, we address it. The idea of having an ombudsman, a representative that would address these issues at the business level, where if we do see some imbalance, we attack that and fix it. So, that's kind of an overall start of the discussion.
Okay, Mr. Councilman Hawkins.
But, don't we, and I say we, not just Cherokee Nation, but across the United States, don't we find acceptable certain policies that are going to skew that free market? We already find acceptable on the federal level and at the state level that we're going to encourage minority contractors. There's already a cost built in because of that. I mean, we could dispense with those laws altogether, go to a purely cost structure, forget
Right.
the identity, but we don't do that
No,
because there's
you're
a certain
right.
value associated with that. And I guess here, I mean, isn't it kind of a trade-off? I mean, we're not talking about completely losing because we have higher priced contracts. We're also gaining entrepreneurs within Cherokee Nation that are citizens. I know you recognize that, but that's part of the debate here.
I would completely agree with you. That is what we're after, to not jeopardize the integrity of the system, but at the same time recognize that we want to have some preference. I completely agree. Now, you know, the question is, where do you jump off on that? I mean, at what point does it create imbalance in the system and create? So I think when you look at the state government and federal government, you have goals. For example, there's a minority hiring goal or a minority contracting goal. And that's the way they say it. It is a goal. So that if you said, let's look at federal contracting to small business. Well, they have a small business goal. And so it's not where you can take this contract as this particular legislative requirement. But at the end of the day, we have to look at your efforts and say, you've accomplished these kinds of goals in achieving that kind of indirect objective, that objective for the tribe.
There's got to be some kind of carrot and stick approach, though. I mean, they do have goals at the federal level and the state level, but there are some consequences to not meeting those goals. And so I'm just wondering, are there sufficient consequences for C&E if you don't meet those goals? I mean, you are going to make, David Stewart, you're going to make every effort possible. But again, maybe your successor doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
And so what, for C&E as an entity, what's really the incentive to comply with these goals if we don't mandate that you award certain contracts?
Well, one way is through incentive at the comp level. Is to incent management to do that. So you could have certain goals in the executive compensation structure that say, you perform these goals. For example, some of my comp is based on me having a Cherokee successor in place and all of our management team. So they have special rewards for doing that. And that's a goal. And if you don't achieve it, then you don't get it. I mean, that is one way. And I think we can do that by the chief going through our board of directors and stating these goals at the corporate level and saying, you have to achieve those goals. And if you don't, then, I mean, obviously, the penalty is difficult. I mean, how do you penalize or incent? The way we incent really is through initiatives. Cherokee, we're going to establish metrics that say we're going to have a certain percentage of our outsourcing go to Cherokee vendors. That goal needs to be X, and it needs to increase a certain amount over time. Those are business goals that I think we can put in place that would incent, and then it would be the job of council to monitor those goals and say, how did the companies do in achieving that? Similar to the federal government.
All right, thank you, Mr. Thank you, Mr.
Would the chair consider at this time acknowledging that we do have a quorum
Sure.
present?
I just want to let everybody know we do have a quorum now.
And as a part, since we do have a quorum present, Councilor Fishing Hawk had placed 4 amendments along with our changes in our act, and she has asked me to put that in the form of a motion that those amendments be considered along with this act at this time. And she's going to be here shortly, but she wanted these on the table so that as the parties discussed it, that we might also ask them questions about these 4 amendments.
Okay, so you want to make that a motion?
I'll make that a motion.
Put these in, and then do you want to present them, or do you want to wait till she gets here, or what?
Well, as Mr. Stewart is talking to us, if these come up in the conversation, we can go ahead and discuss them then.
Okay,
So I'll second.
we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? None. Is that all?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Just one follow. So, I mean, as we speak right now, there are no incentives within the pay and comp structure to do this care and
Well,
discovery
the chief,
right now.
no, they don't exist, but the chief has placed that as a high priority to the comp committees and the boards of directors to do that. So what we're doing now is we're coming up with proposals to do this. So,
Because, I mean, it seems to me we're sort of filling what we see as a void.
Right.
And you guys are trying to fill that void too.
right.
And I don't mean to say it's a race against the clock, but I know we're moving on this. But to the extent that there's some concrete proposals and you can give us a time horizon, that might cause us to say, well, wait a minute, maybe we should slow down.
Right.
But right now, they're just kind of in the development stage with the chief. They're high priority, but we don't have any details you can share with us right now.
Well, actually, we do. I mean, they're in different forms, and we have a list of those. One is turnover. You know, we want to keep our employees from leaving and going to another job. That's one metric. The other metric is Native American employment. You know, we're at 60%, so the determination of keeping that 60 as we grow and increasing it, keeping that percentage steady throughout the management ranks so that we don't get a skew on non-Indians in upper management positions. So I think that's one of them. Our percentage of work that we get out to Cherokee vendors is one, and we have that percentage. So the idea is that we keep that percentage, and then we, over time, start increasing that percentage. So what we end up doing is we end up coming up with procedures and practices that actually, for example, hiring Indians. Okay, we need some process to go out and find people to hire. Well, we're doing that. We have a job bank where everybody gets their resumes in. We have personal attention. They all get a letter back that says, okay, thank you for applying. We put them into the system. It's not perfect, but we have gone above and beyond just taking a resume and going, well, you don't fit the bill, or, if we don't have enough show up, that's tough. We don't do that. We go out and find, we advertise, we recruit, we go to conferences. So there actually has been a lot of work done in that regard for us to do that. Now, so I can get you that and give you a summary of it so you'll know that this is not, just something we thought of yesterday. This has been in the works for a while.
And then have you all, with respect to this whole legislation, will you have anything prepared that kind of goes down that says, we don't recommend, we recommend, and we have specific changes we'd like to see?
Well, we do, and I believe this document, Henry, was this handed out?
Yes.
This, the proposed contract language and bid process. Do you have this? Okay, so this is an attempt to do that. So if you look at number one, the bidding, we only have 2 or 3 major categories. One is the selection process, then how you pay them, and then disclosure of the bid results. I mean, those are kind of the 3 topics. So the current language that we have in different contracts in an effort to get there are listed in the current specific contract language piece. And what we've done is taken those and condensed them into some standard language that we would say that we would require in our policy that would exist in all of our contracts. And that's down in the proposed section. So I'll give you a chance to... We put these into bid package documents now, but they're not in the contract. So what we would do is require these to be in every contract.
So David, I have one quick question. Really what we're after is our subcontractors feel like they're the ones that are getting the short end of the deal, because our prime contractors Clayco all the time, so they're Native American, so we know we've got that covered. I think where we need to really seal this whole deal up is for all of our small subcontractors getting that opportunity. And I would think there's a boatload of them people out there that I don't think would ever affect the integrity of bidding anything, because there's just a lot of Native American and Cherokee-owned businesses out there that are not getting the opportunity. And whether that's from Flintco or who, I don't know. you know. So.
Well, I think the.
But I believe they are getting better, though. I will have to.
Yeah, our process is intended to give them the opportunity. So I think, Sean, you may want to, we really go out of our way to give them opportunity to show up through one stop. They know about it. They have the plans. We deliver the plans in some cases. They know about it. They show up, and we work with them. So, you know, Sean has been intimately and familiar with that, so I'll let you.
Yeah, I've lived and breathed it for 3 years on these big construction projects and the one before. And the smaller size contracts, Buell, I wholeheartly agree with you that there are plenty of Cherokee businesses and Indian-owned businesses out there that can handle that type of a project. But when the projects get to be the magnitude of what we've done, it's just difficult to find a taro vendor that has the capacity, either financially, through the bonding process, or through their organization, to handle the size of these projects. Electric, plumbing, heat and air, all the major components, they're just not out there. And if they are, they don't like to go through the taro process. And, you know, John and I have discussed a lot of times about how to make that easier or better for people to become taro certified. And, you know, there's just a lot of hard feelings out there about that process by the individuals out there that have the ability probably to do some of the smaller work, but they just won't go through the process. You know, on our cultural and tourism renovations and everything, we're just finding it extremely difficult to find people that would come in and go through the certification. I've got one friend in particular that does a lot of work in you know, 3 or 4 counties here, and he just won't go through that process. And if John, I don't know, yeah, he's back here. And if he disagrees with anything I'm saying, I want him to speak up. But when we get in to these large contracts and large construction projects, it's just very difficult. For instance, Green Country Steel. They couldn't have handled that project by themselves. They had to partner up with Bennett and, you know, to be able to handle that. And it's not because we haven't tried or Flintco hasn't tried to get taro people on the project. It's just that there's a lot of obstacles to do that on this size. Now, if you get down in the smaller ones, we do a pretty good job of that, and they can handle that. But, you know, there's just it's just tough. And I read, I don't guess we've got to it, but I read this second one here about the penalty, a 12% penalty on the general contractor. I can promise you that any penalties that you add are going to flow through to the nation. So we're penalizing ourselves, essentially, because everybody's just going to mark up what they do to us to cover themselves. There's nobody going to take that burden on. And
yeah, I think Sean's got a good point, that the magnitude of these jobs, the legal, the bonding, the financial, the employee base that it requires, for example, to do the tile on the hotel, where there's not, 3 or 4 contractors can even do that in the state. So, yeah.
I mean, John worked, he held our hands to the fire on just Toby Keith's. And on the heat and air, John, correct me when I talk out of school here, we tried to get a taro heat and air guy. There's plenty of taro, I won't say plenty, there are taro heat and air companies. They didn't have time to do it, or they couldn't do it. I think we ended up saying, okay, because they had to do some tie-ins to the existing system there. We even said, okay, and this may be where I get it wrong, but just run the ductwork for us. Just hang the ductwork, and we'll do the tie-ins and all of that with whoever else was on the project, and they just wouldn't do it. Is that correct?
Correct. They didn't have time.
Didn't have time. So, and I understand everybody's frustration. And that flows through to us, and we're frustrated too. But, you know, honestly, we're doing, as a company, we're doing everything we can to get the work to Terrell, if not Terrell, Cherokee owned, if not Cherokee owned, Indian owned. It's just really tough. And to me, what might need to happen is somehow partner people up. You know, before we ever do contracts, there maybe needs to be an initiative where we give them a mentor. We put an electrician with a mentor and let them mentor them on other projects that aren't even cheap, to try to build them up and get them working on other things. I don't think it's just stuff within the Cherokee Nation. I think it starts way down here to get them ready so that when there are projects, they can do it.
And that might be the reason a lot of these are goals and objectives, because we can't make companies do the work. I mean, we could have all the work in the world, but if the companies don't fit the bill or can't do it for the right price, we cannot legislate enough to force us to make that decision unless you put an imbalance in the system. I think what this council should do is to ensure that we are following these practices. And I don't know if it's committee-based or it's whatever, but it's to ensure that we do have the processes in place. And I can assure you, I know how much time I spend on it. I know how much time he spends on it. We spend an incredible amount of time trying to tell people we've got the jobs, get up here, we're trying to help you, and we just can't force them. There's no way you can legislate enough, and if you try to, then it will put this in balance, and it won't make it competitive or fair.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, can you think of either of you can think of anything specific in the Terra certification process that seems to be so onerous for some of these Indian-owned contractors? Because if it's a problem with that, then we should probably also, or in the alternative, address that.
Well, let me just say the guys I've talked to, it's two things. It's a mountain of paperwork that they have to go through and provide. And the other thing is their personal tax returns. They feel like that's an invasion of their privacy. They don't want what they make or don't make broadcast all around.
And Todd, is that purely tribal ordinance, or are we having to comply with some federal rules that require that we get that information?
I apologize, Counselor, I was reading my brief.
But I just, and you may not know, but the issue is what's so onerous about the Tarot process, and one of the issues is having to disclose personal tax information when you're getting Tarot certified. And so I'm wondering, is that purely a creature of the tribal statute, something we have control over, or are we under some federal guideline that we collect that information?
I'm going to assume it's tribal statute, tribal policy, nothing on the federal end, but I can't answer that off the top of my head.
I think we have somebody, John, you want to come up, or Miss Kelly, whichever one? She's passing out already.
The reason we ask for the tax documents is, one, the whole complete application is for proof of Indian ownership. Each step, whether it be for the tribal membership cards or for the federal tax returns or for different balance sheets or financial documents that we ask for, each element builds to make sure that this business is owned by a Native American, 51%. So we take the whole, all the documents we get for the whole picture, so the committee can make an informed decision when they're selecting to whether certify or not certify a business as Indian owned.
And I don't expect that you'll have all the information in your head, but has there been a time when everything's checked out and then we get to personal taxes and suddenly something disclosed on that document shows us that in fact we shouldn't certify this person?
Yes, it's on your tax documents as a business, you have to disclose what percentage you own, whether it's profit or loss. if you're claiming to have 51% ownership, let's say I claim to have 51% ownership, and on my taxes on the Schedule K of the tax papers, it says I own 49%. Well, I registered that to the federal government that I only own 49% of that company.
So are we asking for Schedule K or some comparable schedule, or are we telling them you have to disclose all of your taxes?
We ask for the whole tax.
And do you think that we're actually being overbroad in that regard, that in fact we're capturing information that we really don't need?
No, I don't. I think we need all the information to make a thorough decision, for the committee to make a thorough decision to make sure that we are certifying Indian-owned firms. And we have several companies that the documentation is always complete to certify them.
So any frustration expressed among potential taro vendors that they're having to disclose tax information, in your view, is they may be frustrated, but we're collecting the information for good purpose, and we can't streamline it in any way.
Great. Well, here's what we do. Here's how I decide to streamline the thing. What we're doing is, if they want to hold on their tax documents till the day of the meeting, I invite them to show up at 8 o'clock. Our meeting begins at 8:30 on the first Tuesday of the month. They can come in at 8 o'clock outside with their tax documents, and they hand me their tax documents into a room where the committee votes. No one goes in, no one goes out. They can actually sit out beside the door, and we can take their tax documents and go through that process with them. And then we're done. When the committee is done making a decision whether to certify them or not, I will take the tax documents back to that owner. So one, he doesn't make a copy, and two, he gets his tax documents back right then. So that's how we're trying to work around that for the people who don't want to turn in their tax documents.
Okay. All right, thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Councilor Fish and Hawk.
John, I'm curious, what part of your tax returns do you need besides C and K to do that? I mean, what other part do you want?
We just ask for the whole thing to make sure everything follows through the tax documents. Like the first few pages are talking about the ownership. It has the percentages, and it talks about, some of them, the different documents talk about where the dividends are going, or dividends of that company. We also you could look at possibly if you're the owner of the company, but your salaries, you have 2 employees and your salaries are 10 times what you make, well, that could throw up a red flag as well, too. The committee makes sure that everything is in order, that it is Indian-owned.
I can kind of understand that, because my family owns different things, and I can understand why I wouldn't want part of my stuff that has nothing to do with it, given out. Because, I'm kind of private. I don't even get my taxes done in the state.
We ask for business tax documents. We don't ask for the personal. But a lot of times, these people, the smaller companies, they include everything in one tax return. They're taking money right out or whatever. But if it's a business side separately, we will take the business tax records. That's what we ask for. That's what we want to see. But if I'm a single construction owner and everybody pays me cash or pays me by check to John Operacker, I may just put it on my taxes all as one. And that's what we do there. And there's a lot of other steps. We ask for canceled checks for accounts receivable. We look at different bank accounts, who actually can sign checks off that bank account. And we also look at payroll checks, who's actually signed the payroll, and things like that. It's the whole process to get the whole picture.
Is that it, Jody?
Yeah.
Chuck.
Just briefly, are you asking for this information pursuant to something specific in the current taro statute, or are these based on rules that the commission has adopted to carry out the current taro?
This is our general provisions that tie into the act.
Okay.
Our policies that we have right now. They've been used since, man, how long have we used these for?
When we first established.
You want to come up front, Miss Kelly?
I could holler from back here. I have a bad leg.
Oh, do you? I'm sorry. I apologize. We have
We
plenty.
established the policies back when we first started the taro on the certification. In fact, these were some of the processes that were in place that we were told when we were working with the EEOC and the taro, National Taro, to get it established. Because when they were coming forward to be certified, and I think some of you council members did at one point in time, sit on that certification committee, you have to be able to show some sort of records. Because in the very beginning stages of taro, we had a lot of front companies where you had an Indian who came in and he couldn't tell you anything about that business, any of the equipment, but he was 51% owner, and The non-Indian, the white man, was sitting over here, and he was answering all the questions. And he was the guy that had the money. And then what happened was, when they decided to split their ways, then here come the Indian, and he said, well, he kicked me out. So what we did is we went back and we said that we need to see these things, because right now you've got some businesses right now that are coming before that certification committee. They're bona fide businesses, and they're bringing in these Indians to say that they're certified. Well, if they can't produce those documents to show that they're 51%, then they're not certifiable.
Is that all, Ms. Kelly? Thank you for coming up to the front.
We still have one.
Yeah, you may want to get on the front row, I think. We're getting more and more people showing up.
Also, I think that it protects the integrity of the system over time. Been lots of abuse, I think you've heard about. So this really protects the value of the Terro certification, so there's not a lot of it.
Okay, we have another question.
I get, and this might just as well be posed to Todd, but I'm not so much alarmed that we're asking for this information, except to the extent that contractors have expressed frustration. But I guess I want to make sure that, I guess I want to identify where the specific legal authority is for us to ask for this information in the first place. It's got to be in the statute. So I guess I'd like to, and I don't have to know immediately where it is, but I'd like to know where it is that we've given Terra the authority to collect this information. I assume we have, but I just...
I think it's in policy,
John has it, Dave.
isn't it?
Well, it's in policy, but policy is born of statute. So.
Right. I think the statute says you'll have to do this, and in order to comply with that.
Yes, it is in the statute that the Terro Committee will actually form policies to certify Native American businesses. That's in the existing.
So we've given you just extraordinarily broad authority to form these policies. We could retract that if we wanted to, but we haven't seen fit to do that. So until then, your policy carries the day.
Yeah, and for the most part, 99.9% of the vendors do comply. Very seldom do they not comply for the tax rates.
But isn't the point that they're making that in fact we don't have a bigger pool of Terra vendors because folks won't participate in the process because they know what the process says and they don't, so they're not even getting into your numbers there. They're not even coming to your door. And they may be unreasonable in not coming to your door, but that is a fact, according to C&E, that they're not coming to your door based on the fact that they think it's too onerous.
Correct, and it may be a couple owners, but when you're talking a couple owners out of 500 businesses that we have certified.
I don't know how many it is.
We
Maybe
have
a bunch.
approximately 500.
But I mean, it may be a bunch that aren't coming. That's part of the problem, is we're trying to identify an unknown here.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know how many.
Evidence.
I mean, you really don't
Right.
know how many are saying we won't show up. I think it's one factor. There might be.
If we had a better handle on that, we might say, wait a minute, we're going to have to rein in this request for documents or streamline this process, but until we know more,
Well, we could talk
Should do
to
that.
vendors and find out if they are not registering,
I think we should do
you
that.
know, for some reason that's in the policy.
Thank you. Thank you.
Tina?
Chairman Anglin, would it be possible to have C&E address their proposed contract language changes that they have on the two-page handout that they gave us? Maybe some of these things that we're discussing might not be for C&E so much as they're for the committee, but these proposed language changes that he's got here, I would like to hear his thoughts on each one of them.
Sure. David, are you prepared to do that, address each item by item?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, on the first item, subcontractor bidding and selection, the proposed language. This is a summary of language that we've had in different contracts at the top, and we'd like to summarize that and say that these will be in every contract that we enter into. So what we're telling you is that part of our policy and procedure says these will be in every contract. Okay? Right now it's kind of haphazard, but we would tell you that that's going to happen. In item number 2, in the disclosure of bid results, this is a difficult because you're going to note, you're disclosing who bid what. There's two schools of thought. I mean, one is that, to be competitive, you don't want people
David,
to
hold
know.
that thought.
I'm sorry.
Well, that actually, am I
Okay.
recognized?
Yes.
That actually is a thought I want to discuss with you. Why is it that we don't disclose the information of how people have bid on each line item within their bid proposal?
Well, a number of reasons. Jerry, you want to take that one?
See, here's my thought. How is the taro vendor that's not getting the bid supposed to learn how to be more competitive when we're not releasing that information so that they can see where they're overbidding or where they're on mark or where they're underbidding? State of Oklahoma releases every bid once it's open and they have selected the winning bid. They release every bid within 21 days, line by line, so that you, the unsuccessful bidder, can go and look and see how I can be more competitive the next month or the month after. When we're only releasing a total figure, we don't know if we overbid in mobilization, if we overbid in cement, did we overbid in rebar materials, was our signage too high? Was our paperwork, where we were going to be paid for our paperwork, was that too high? We have no idea what items we need to be more competitive on. But through a process that they do every month, you can, if you desire to be so, you can be more competitive. And is that not what we want our taro people to be? We want them to learn when they don't get a bid. We want them to learn why they didn't get it. And so I guess I have to take issue, David, with all respect to you, but I have to take issue when we only release the winning bid amount, we're not telling them anything. But when we release the whole bid to them, then they can go line by line and see where they were not competitive.
Yeah, I'm not completely against that. I think there might be some non-disclosure agreements that we might have that might violate that on big contracts. But I don't know, Jerry. I'll kind of throw that out to you and Bob as a discussion point.
It would appear to me, David, that the more the public knows about the bid process, the more open we are, the more competitive the bids will be.
Right.
I
see your
could be
point on that.
wrong, but I think if we look at what the feds do and what the state does and what other entities do, the more open the process is at the end, after you've selected the successful bid, that helps those individuals next time learn, okay, I was so far off on moving my equipment to the side, I was never going to get the bid. I need to get more competitive. I need to find someone that's going to move my equipment a little cheaper. Or that's, I'll never get in the game.
Well,
But that's a complaint I hear from the small vendor, is that, well, gosh, we don't know where we were over.
Well, why don't I come up with, there are certain situations where it doesn't work. So why don't I come up with a more broad, rather than we won't do that we would publish bids in these situations and try to zero in on those that would kind of satisfy our concern and also help make everybody more competitive. So,
I think it would be extremely helpful to the small vendor. They're feeling their way. They're trying to learn the process, and they get real discouraged because they're thinking, okay, he bid, 20,000 less than me. How did he do that?
Right. We'll come up with that.
And they need to know where they need to get more competitive on the line items.
I see your point. We'll do that.
And this is a good start, but I can see where we need to go next. We can, just go to the next level. Let's release it. It doesn't have to be released necessarily on our website. You might just release the overall figure on our website, but we need to do the courtesy of sending that.
Or on request. We could do it on request.
Well, that would be a good start then, and let them know that on request they could ask for a line-by-line breakdown. So if they really truly want to be more competitive, there's a way they could study. I know the state sends a company my husband's acquainted with, sends him a little summary how everybody bid on each line item. If there was 12 bidders and it's 20 line items on the contract, he knows how everyone bid on each contract line item. And if he got beat out, then he knows where he's got to be more competitive the next time.
And I think there are some categories where that fits perfect, some where there might be concerns, and what we can do is bring that to you and say, here's our 4 categories of contractors, here's what we recommend in each category, and discuss it. So I'll be open to that.
I'll yield back to Tina, but is that what you're proposing in our proposed statute right now? The disclosure? The disclosure policy that you're talking about, where we might make full disclosure, is that?
I would like our council, wherever it's at, right there, Todd, to work with these entities and work that wording out so that we can put it in the act.
We'll be putting it in the act.
Right. So, and that's what I would ask, is that Todd work with our various entities out there along with Taro and get that worked up so that we can disclose to these small vendors where they're getting off the mark. We want to encourage them to be more competitive. The only way they're going to get the job is if they're the most competitive. And if we don't give them some idea of where they're getting off the mark, they're just going to get discouraged and go home.
Yeah, and there may be cases where we don't award on low bid. It's basically if we think you can, if you don't have the resources to do it. So see, that would come into play there. Where
And somehow Todd will need to work that into the language to go into this act, where that we exposed. I just don't see how it does not make everything more competitive if we expose how these people won by line item. Even if it's up on request, the most interested parties will do it. Maybe you don't want to throw it out there to the world, but up on request, we should release it.
point taken, we'll come up with work with Todd on coming up with a proposal that satisfies all of that.
Okay, Tina, we want to bring Jerry up to maybe answer some of the questions that you had. Jerry will come forward now. And he was going to explain some of the reasons on the line item.
A big part of it, I think, and we got into this sometime in some detail at the last council meeting where we discussed this, but a lot of it goes back to having projects that are hard bid, which I think generally is probably what the state typically does, where you have all of your plans and specifications drawn up when it goes out to bid. You're dealing with known quantities as far as the types of projects they have, either buildings, roads, bridges, infrastructures, that type of thing. As David explained in the last meeting, we have not always had the luxury of having complete plans and specs when we bid something out. A lot of times we get into design build type bids where you're dealing with either cost plus or a construction manager who then develops the specifications that are later bid out. And that's not to say that when it comes time to bid them out, we can't have further details where we could implement a process like this. And I think that's what David's saying, that we can go back and take a look at the various situations that we have right now. In the past, even on some of our more fully fleshed out packages, if you will, we'll get bids that are all over the place between the different contractors. So what we do then is bring them in for a de-scope process, and this particular contractor's 50 tons of gravel may be different than this contractor's 50 tons of gravel, and that's why they have a different price. It may be, oh, well, we didn't know that we had to have transportation built in there. We were going to do that separately. Now, that's not to say we don't flesh all that out before we make a decision, but oftentimes when you just get the bids in, it's very seldom that you make a decision right then just based on line items. And in some cases, you don't have those line items. Again, if you're doing a design build, you might have a not to exceed price. You might have a cost plus type price. So I think in the past, that's one area where there may be a bit of a challenge in getting it that way. Another issue that we may have occasionally is before we go into a project, we may enter into a non-disclosure agreement with the contractors. We may be providing them plans, certain information about our company that we don't want disclosed. Similarly, they may be telling us they don't want their bids disclosed. So unless you work this process out ahead of time, you could be running afoul of non-disclosure restrictions in there. I'd like to add also that even though we're not disclosing those prices right now, I think there's been several instances here in the past couple of years where there have been specific questions as to bid selections and bid results, which we're certainly always happy to explain that process to the council. Taro office is always involved in both the pre-bid process, the bid selection process. And John, I don't know, do you ever go into any post-bid discussion with contractors to give them guidance on where they may be off?
Never understood it. I've never.
So that may be something that we want to take a look at as we administer this process, is for those Taro bidders who don't get the project awarded, is look at it post-bid and say, here's where you were off. But probably to summarize, I'd say the biggest struggle has just been that, we're not, very few of our bid packages going out right now are fully spec'd out, fully designed like you would on a road project. So there's always a lot of investigation going into whether this number is the same as this number. And at the end of the day, if we're awarding it to a non-Taro firm, and there are Taro firms that were involved in the bidding, I assure you that is a discussion that's had many times as to is there a reason why we can't award it to the Taro firm.
But I think what you're wanting to ensure is the transparency of all that. And so in the future, we're not going to have many of these design-build projects. So see, this whole thing is created.
And that was, I guess I was operating from a big assumption. Last month, I believe, David, you told us we were getting away from design build, and it would be a hard
It would be closer.
Bid.
Right, it wouldn't be as subjective as what Jerry's talking about. So I think if you would let us go, and then come back, I think what we can do is satisfy we want transparency, we want everybody to know that we're not awarding on some, we like this guy or that guy. You want it to be fair. So I think what we're going to recommend then is something that is transparent, it fits the bill for these different categories, and that you can feel comfortable with that.
I think that will certainly answer a lot of questions right now for the small Taro vendors, because they seem to think there's some big secrecy process here. And I think we're to a point within your organization that we can be transparent now, because I realize the urgency of getting these casinos up and going, because there were dollars lost every day that the door wasn't open. But now we're to a point where we're adding to or increasing the size, and we can afford the luxury of possibly coming in with a hard bid versus a design-built type situation.
Closer to that. So yeah. So I think you're right. So I think if this particular number 2 item, the disclosure, let us go and come back. I think we'd be happy with something like that.
And I didn't mean to blindside you. I mean, I just got these, and if I don't bring these things up when I think about them, sometimes they tend to get put somewhere else.
Yeah, my apologies. I was speaking more as to what's been the issue in the past, but again, I think we can certainly look at where we are now, come up with these proposals, and do something that.
And I fully realize the importance of and the urgency of time before, but I thought we were kind of moving to a more advanced step now.
Absolutely. Okay, so we'll leave it with that, Todd, and we'll get together and come up with a similar proposed section just like in number 1. So then if we go on to number 3 on the prompt payment, we've taken a lot of steps informally to get people paid. There's always, something falls through the cracks, but we get on it. We're going to have a person at C&B that is going to be dedicated to resolving some of these things, so that, at a global look from the business entities, there will be someone to call that can check up on it and expedite the process. If you're having a hard time getting paid, then we're going to have a hotline for you, or someone to call, and then we'll get on that. And then in addition, what we'll have proposed, if you look at, it's really not addressed in our contracts, so we'll have provisions on the proposed section there. If you'll read those, and that includes that if a contractor doesn't pay, that would be a violation that we would use in selecting them in the future, if they're not paying their bills. And I think that what the legislation should say is that the business entities shall create policies and procedures to ensure, prompt payment to our vendors. And then we come to you and go, here are our policies and procedures, and then make sure you're comfortable with that. And then those might, due to business reasons, change a little bit. But we have to be able to move and shake, with business. And so that gives us the flexibility, but we would be responsible to come up with something in our contracting that has these type provisions in it. Okay, so those are
Councilman,
So on the policy, you would propose the policy, would bring it to us for the approval?
we can do that. And that way you'd have some measure of control. I mean, it's up to you on how much, how you want to exercise that.
I think that would be, I think that's certainly something this body would want to consider. And ultimately, we're the ones that get all the complaints. And that would be very helpful for us if we knew what the rules were so that we could explain them to some of our constituents as they call us.
And it would also provide flexibility as business conditions change. We can change our policy and bring that to you, and then you don't have to go back and change law, or you could have maybe a committee approve those or something like that, instead of actually making it a legislative act. All right, so and then the handling of the retainage is the final issue, and we've done a lot of things to try to facilitate payment of the retainage early. So what we would put is this proposed language that we would allow it to be released and make sure that that's in all of our contracts. So, for example, we could come to you periodically and say, here's our set procedures. It would have similar language like this. You would at a committee level approve that or provide comment, work out some process. And then if we want to change it, we could bring that back to you and you could see it, and we could change it and so on. That would allow us to facilitate changes a little bit easier than law change.
I would make a motion that we consider doing that on a monthly basis for the next 6 months and see how that works out.
just on the retainages or?
No, on the policy.
On the whole policy of everything that David has proposed? Do you want to make that motion?
Yes, I would make that motion.
Have a second? Jody, any seconds? All in favor of that, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? No? Okay, thanks.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I just wanted to clarify that the nation is also prepared to implement the same proposals that Mr. Stewart's presented. So we've worked on these together, and they're proposals we can implement consistently across the board.
Thank you, Melanie. And I really believe this retainage deal will work out a lot better for
It needs to
the
happen.
first people on the job, you know.
I mean, that's your profit sitting right there for months.
Yeah, Bill John.
Does that mean the nation will come at the same time and do the same report?
I don't know how long until you can. We're doing
Well-
a revision of our acquisition policies right now that haven't taken into account these items yet, so.
Well, I think we're sitting here talking about looking at it for 6 months before we,
I think
No,
these things we can
something more
implement
hard
pretty
fast.
quickly.
Yeah, I think next month we'll bring these to you at committee level and say, this is what we're doing. Is that soon enough? I mean, these we're ready to do immediately. I can tell you that, we're
I mean, if they're going to do them immediately and then come back and share with us how it's working, I'm just asking, is the nation doing the same thing, or are you going to be prepared to do the same report as
And if we're
well?
going to do a report about how it's working, do we want some experience under it?
Yeah, we'll do that every month. I think we can do it. I don't see you going to implement. I don't know. I know what you all can respond to that.
I believe on the nation's side, we can disclose the bid results after the award is made. I don't know if you want it for everything that's bid or if there's a dollar threshold, but
Well, on that issue, we were going to make a suggestion on categories and work with Todd on that issue. On the other two, those are implemented, I think, immediately.
Right.
We're doing that today, at least at the C&E level. And the retainage issues.
Kelly, if it would be possible, I would suggest it for everything, because the smaller the thing is, the more that we're getting calls about.
okay.
It's not the Flintco people that call us. It's the small folks that call us. Flintco people are very happy.
Yeah.
But the small people that are trying to sell something to us are the ones that are unhappy, that don't have a real understanding of how the whole thing works. And the more we can open it up and show them that everything's being done the way it's supposed to be done, and here's how you could become more competitive. Because we need them to realize that we've got to get a competitive bid. They can't just throw out $1 million for a $100 deal and expect us to take it. But I believe if we would expose that information to them, especially that line-by-line business, then that's going to force them. There's no reason then that they shouldn't be able to see in black and white, okay, I overbid this, I was just trying to make way more than I should be able to make.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I don't have a problem, I just wanted to clarify that. I think all of our bids and award documents are currently available to Taro office, and maybe we can work with them to have some seminars or something on specific types of commodities.
And I would suggest, as we change our policies, if that could be shared with this body, it would be most helpful when we talk to our constituents.
Yes.
Because we get blindsided. I think everybody in this room it's happened to, somebody will call and say, well, this is the way they're doing things, and we have no idea that there's been a policy change. And it would have been great if we had been told 2 or 3 months ago, we're looking at doing this.
Mm-hmm.
So you all need to get ready, because this is a different way of doing this particular project. If we knew about it up front, we could maybe take care of a lot of those things without having to go to another level. And I would put that in the form of a motion, if we need to put it in the form of a motion, that we have you all, as you can, bring those policies to us on a monthly basis so that we can keep up with them, so that we can expose those to the folks that are talking to us.
I think, and especially with what we're working on the acquisition management policies, they haven't been rewritten in several years. So even internally for administration, we're going to have to put together some material, or some training materials, and we can certainly share that with this committee and give you a heads up. Our goal is to make them more efficient, make sure that we're following all of the Taro requirements, and giving everybody opportunity for open competition.
Within that motion, Chairman, I would ask that for the next 6 months, the policy changes all be brought to this body so that we could look at them. And let's look at it for the next 6 months on a trial basis and see if that doesn't take care of a lot of the questions that seem to be concerning the constituents that are calling us.
Is your second okay with that? Yeah. Okay, we have a motion, we have a second on the floor. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, hearing none, passed.
Mr. Chair, may I make one follow-up comment? What we failed to talk about when we talked about this sheet here is specifically C&I, because C&I is a little bit different in that, and Brian can speak to this if you'd like to, but that they're not usually the owner when it comes to the project. They're usually doing it on behalf of an owner that they're contracting for. So they're usually the general, and then they're subcontracting out to others to get the project done. So disclosure in particular would be subject to whether the owner will agree that they can disclose that information. So they will seek to try to get that kind of release from them, but they may not always be able to get it from the owner.
Okay, Baker, and Brian, you want to come up and kind of explain that to here in just a minute, and let Councilor Baker.
Well, and if CNI is in the position of general, I would certainly hope that they would be going out of their way to get subs that were Terrell certified.
Yes. I mean, our bidding process, I mean, the entire intent of being a general contractor is to try to break the packages up and work with Terrell suppliers or Cherokee-owned businesses going out on any of the business that we have. And primarily it's been in the construction business. So that is our intent. It is in our policies and procedures, qualifying suppliers, and then even scorecarding the suppliers through the bids or weighting it.
I would think they'd have no problem reporting how they're doing with that. I mean, it wouldn't be disclosing the owner's lines or anything. If you're reporting on how you're doing with Terrell vendors as after you've already got the contract.
Right. I mean, spend report, how we're spending the money,
Yeah.
you know, overall breakdown. I don't see a problem with that.
Is everybody clear on that? I think we're on. Is there anything else? No other business? Is there a motion to adjourn?
So maybe.
Second.
Motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned.